I never expected it to happen like this, never saw it coming. A random day, like any other, a moment of pure clarity that would change everything. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels, when the sound of a car door slamming caught my attention. I thought nothing of it at first, just the usual noise from the neighbor's driveway. But then, something about it seemed off. I looked up just in time to see her, Hannah, my wife, walking into the house with an unfamiliar figure. His face wasn't familiar, but his posture screamed confidence. His jeans were too tight, and the arrogance in his step was unmistakable. He was younger than me, that was clear. I didn't know him, but my gut told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't even bothered to hide it anymore. It wasn't that I had never suspected. The signs had been there for weeks, maybe even longer, but I chose to ignore them. The late nights, the sudden mood swings, the distance in her voice when she'd speak to me. She'd been cold, almost like a stranger in our own home. But this? This was different. I could see the smirk on her face as she greeted him. It was like I wasn't even in the same room. I stood up, my heart thumping in my chest. I wasn't sure if it was the shock, the disbelief, or the anger that started to bubble up inside me, but I had to act. I wanted to scream, to ask her what the hell was going on, but I stayed silent. Watching. Waiting. The man gave me a quick glance, but it was as though I didn't even exist. Hannah was busy making small talk with him, probably about something meaningless, maybe the weather, but I could see the way she laughed. It wasn't the same laugh she gave me anymore. It wasn't warm. It was flirtatious. I could feel the coldness creeping into my veins as I realized how little she cared about the man she'd once promised to love. I could hear the click of her heels as she walked toward the bedroom. I wanted to follow, to confront her right there, but I knew I had to stay calm. I needed answers. But how did I ask for those answers when I was drowning in the realization that everything I thought was real had been a lie? I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't just sit there. I had to find the truth, no matter how much it hurt. But nothing prepared me for what happened next. The next few hours felt like an eternity. After the man, who I now realized was just a pawn in her game, left, I couldn't sit still. My thoughts swirled like a hurricane, a mix of anger, confusion, and disbelief. I kept thinking back to the way she smiled at him, how they seemed so comfortable together, like she hadn't been married to me for the last 5 years. But even more haunting was the gut-wrenching feeling that the betrayal had been going on for longer than I cared to admit. I couldn't let it go. I had to know the truth. I had to uncover it with my own hands. I tried to tell myself that maybe I was overreacting. That maybe I was just imagining things, looking for something that wasn't there. But every minute that passed without confronting her just felt like I was sinking deeper into a pit of despair. So, I decided to go into her things. Not just a few personal items, but everything: her phone, her laptop, her emails. If there was a shred of truth hidden in there, I would find it. It wasn't long before I found what I was looking for. Tucked away in a password-protected folder on her phone was a series of messages between her and him. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. They were explicit, graphic, and deeply intimate. Things she had never shared with me. Things I could barely bring myself to read, but couldn't look away from. Each message tore away at the life I thought I knew. There was no denying it anymore. My stomach twisted in knots. My hands shook as I scrolled through her phone, each message more damning than the last. They'd been meeting in secret for weeks, maybe months. The late nights, the extra work meetings, the random girls' nights that were nothing but excuses. My mind raced back to all the times she had told me she was busy or tired, all while she was sneaking around with him. My trust had been shattered, and the weight of the betrayal hit me like a freight train. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the screen, trying to process everything. How could she? How could she do this to me? To us? The life we had built felt like it was crumbling around me. But in that moment, one thought stood out above everything else: I need answers. My heart pounded as I heard her footsteps approaching. She was back, just as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't torn apart everything I thought was real. The moment she stepped through the door, I couldn't keep it in anymore. I had to confront her. I couldn't just pretend everything was fine. I stood up, holding her phone out in front of her. "What the hell is this, Hannah?" My voice was cold, edged with something raw and primal that I barely recognized. Her eyes widened for a moment, but she quickly masked her surprise with that fake smile she'd been perfecting for months. "What's wrong, babe?" she asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Why are you acting so dramatic?" "You think I'm dramatic?" I spat. "You think I'm dramatic when you're *ing around with some guy behind my back, **?" Her face went pale for a moment, and for a brief second, I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. She took a step back, shaking her head in disbelief. "Oh, come on. Not this again. You're being ridiculous." "Ridiculous?" I repeated, my voice trembling now with fury. "I'm not ridiculous, Hannah. You've been lying to me. For how long? How long has this been going on?" She took a deep breath, her gaze dropping to the floor. "It's not what you think." I couldn't stop myself from laughing bitterly. "Really? Because the messages I just found don't exactly match up with your story. You've been seeing him for months, haven't you?" She finally looked up at me, and there it was, the smirk. That smug, self-satisfied look that I used to hate and love all at once. "You don't understand," she said, her tone cold, almost condescending. "I'm not happy, okay? I haven't been happy for a long time. You've been so focused on your career, so busy with your own thing, that you didn't even notice I was slipping away. I needed someone else. Someone who actually sees me." I felt the blood drain from my face. Every word she spoke was like a dagger in my chest. "So, this is my fault?" I could barely get the words out, they tasted like acid in my mouth. "I'm the one to blame for your affair?" Hannah shrugged nonchalantly. "Maybe. Maybe not. But I'm not sorry. You didn't care enough, and he did. So, yeah, I guess I got what I needed elsewhere." My hands clenched into fists, my body shaking with rage. "You're unbelievable. You think it's that easy? You think you can just walk away from everything we had, everything we built?" She rolled her eyes. "Honestly, I don't owe you an explanation. I've already made my choice. If you can't handle it, then leave. But don't sit here and pretend like I've done something wrong when you're just as much at fault." The words stung. The coldness in her voice, the absolute lack of remorse, it was like talking to a complete stranger. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone I didn't want to know. I didn't know what to say next. The anger was boiling over, but I could feel something else creeping in. Something darker. Something that threatened to break me. I could have walked out right there. I could have demanded a divorce, but the thought of losing everything, my life, my home, the future I thought we'd have, left me paralyzed. The betrayal was too fresh, too painful to fully comprehend. But deep down, I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't just forgive this. I couldn't just pretend like nothing had happened. But what was I supposed to do now? The silence between us stretched for what felt like hours, but in reality, it was only moments. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat heavy, slow, like it was struggling to keep going. I stared at Hannah, this woman who had once been the love of my life, now standing before me like a stranger. She was cold, indifferent, almost smug, and I couldn't process it. It was like I was drowning, but I couldn't even scream for help. You're really just going to stand there and act like I'm the one who ruined everything? I finally managed to say, my voice shaking with frustration. She shrugged, as if it was no big deal. I'm not saying you ruined everything, I'm just saying you were never there when I needed you. She crossed her arms, looking at me like I was the one being unreasonable. Maybe I would have still been loyal if you'd paid attention, but honestly, I was suffocating. I needed someone who could make me feel alive. Alive? I repeated, my eyes wide with disbelief. Is that what this is about? You slept with him because you wanted to feel alive? You threw everything away for that? Hannah's expression didn't soften. Instead, she gave a little shrug, a smug smile tugging at the corners of her lips. You're making it sound like I've committed some horrible sin, but I didn't. I'm just taking care of myself now. I've spent years taking care of you, of this house, of everything, and where has it gotten me? Stuck in this loveless marriage, alone. I'm tired of pretending. The words hit me like a slap to the face, each one harder than the last. Her voice was so casual, as if she was talking about the weather or a bad meal she'd had. She didn't sound sorry, she didn't seem regretful. She wasn't the woman I married, she was someone else entirely. For a moment, I thought I might lose control. I wanted to shout, to throw something, to demand that she beg for my forgiveness. But then I realized, I didn't want her apology. I didn't want her empty words. I wanted the truth, and I had it. But it didn't make it any easier to digest. Do you even care about me anymore? I asked, my voice softer now, almost a whisper, as if asking would somehow break the final thread that held this broken marriage together. Her eyes flickered for a moment, just a split second, before she turned away. You're still stuck on that, huh? Of course, I care about you. But caring isn't enough anymore. It never was. You were too busy with your job, your friends, your life outside of us. I was just a side note. I needed something more, someone who was actually there. I wanted to scream at her, tell her how wrong she was, how hurt I was. I wanted to remind her of all the times I was there, all the times I sacrificed, but it didn't matter. The truth was, no amount of words would make a difference now. The damage was done. And then, something unexpected happened. She stepped forward, closer to me, and I instinctively took a step back. The whole conversation had been a dance, a fight for control, but now, she seemed to be looking for something. It wasn't an apology or remorse, it was something darker. She was almost daring me to react. You're angry, she said, her voice low, almost amused. I can see it in your eyes. But you won't do anything. You'll just sit there and let me tell you how I feel, how I've felt for years, and you'll take it. You'll take it like you always do. She tilted her head slightly, studying me. You've always been passive, never demanding anything. Maybe that's why I couldn't stay. Maybe that's why I ended up in his bed instead of yours. Her words cut like a knife. She knew exactly how to wound me, to make me feel smaller than I had ever felt in my life. The worst part was, she wasn't wrong. I had always been the good guy, the one who tried to keep the peace, who always kept my emotions in check, who made sure everyone else was happy. But in the process, I lost myself. And I lost her. I can't do this, I muttered, my voice barely audible. I can't keep pretending I'm okay with any of this. Hannah's eyes glinted with something almost like satisfaction, but she didn't show any real emotion. Then don't. I'm not asking you to. I've made my choice. You either accept it, or you don't. It's that simple. Her face twisted into a sneer as she took another step back. But don't think you're going to guilt-trip me into feeling bad for living my life. I'm done. I stood there, frozen, my mind struggling to catch up with the reality unfolding around me. How had everything gone so wrong? How had the woman I loved turned into someone so cold, so indifferent? My body was shaking, not just from anger, but from a deep, aching hurt that I couldn't name. "You're done?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but it came out broken. "Just like that?" She looked at me, her eyes empty. "Yeah. Just like that." And with that, she walked past me, as though I was nothing more than an obstacle in her path. I watched her go, unable to say anything, unable to stop her. My entire world had just shattered, and all I could do was stand there and watch it crumble. The door slammed behind her, and I was left in the silence. The kind of silence that felt like the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. I wanted to scream, to break something, but instead, I felt numb. The reality had set in, and I couldn't escape it. She was gone, and she wasn't coming back. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like hours after she left. The house was eerily quiet, almost too quiet. The echo of the front door slamming behind her still reverberated in my mind, like a gunshot ringing in my ears. The life I had spent years building, the life I thought I knew, felt like it had been swept away in an instant. The anger and hurt burned through me, but somewhere deep down, I realized that what I was feeling wasn't just rage, it was pure, crushing disbelief. I was in shock. The room felt smaller somehow. The walls seemed to be closing in, pressing in on me, suffocating me. My mind raced, replaying every conversation, every moment, every touch. Where did it go wrong? How did we get here? I walked through the house in a daze, my steps heavy, my body numb. I couldn't find a place to sit, so I just paced. I walked past the kitchen, where we had shared countless meals together, the couch where we'd watched movies, the bedroom where we had built memories, all of it felt foreign now. I reached the small shelf in the hallway, where we had kept family photos. I stared at the picture of us from our wedding day, smiling, blissfully unaware that all of this was coming. I picked up the frame, feeling the weight of it in my hands. The smile in the picture mocked me now, a cruel reminder of how naive I had been. I wanted to throw it, to break it, but instead, I just let it fall back into place on the shelf. I couldn't destroy the memory, not yet. Part of me was still holding on to it, the belief that maybe, somehow, this wasn't real. But it was real. I sank down onto the couch, my mind spinning. The pain was like a constant pressure in my chest, tightening with every breath. I kept trying to make sense of it, to figure out where it went wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint a single moment. It wasn't one fight, one argument, or one bad decision, it was a slow, insidious betrayal. Hannah had been pulling away for months, and I had refused to see it. I had refused to believe the signs, to trust my instincts. But now? Now, it was too late. The worst part was that I had never seen her as this person. Not in a million years. I had always known Hannah as the girl who would hold my hand during tough times, who would laugh with me until we cried, who would be there when I needed someone. She had been the woman I could always rely on, my rock. And now, that person was gone, replaced by someone who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle. I closed my eyes, trying to drown out the thoughts racing through my mind, but they wouldn't stop. The words she said kept coming back, over and over, like a broken record. I needed someone who could make me feel alive. Alive. I had thought I was enough. I had believed that everything we had, our marriage, our life together, was enough to make her happy. But clearly, it wasn't. The pain turned into something darker. Not just anger, but shame. Shame that I hadn't seen it sooner. Shame that I had been so blind. The doubts crept in, one by one. Was it my fault? Was there something I could have done differently? Could I have been a better husband? A better partner? I pulled myself up from the couch, unable to sit still any longer. I needed to move, to do something. Anything. I grabbed my jacket and walked outside, the cold air hitting me like a slap in the face. The street was empty, the night quiet, but I felt like I couldn't breathe. I started walking, aimlessly, letting my feet take me wherever they wanted. My mind kept flashing to Hannah, to the way she had looked at me when she left. There was no regret in her eyes, only indifference. She had made her choice, and she had already moved on. It hit me hard. The woman I had loved, the one I thought I knew, had already let me go. I stopped in front of a bar, unsure of what I was even doing there. The dim lights inside flickered like they were mocking me. I was alone. Hannah was out there somewhere with him, probably laughing, probably forgetting that I even existed. I walked in and ordered a drink, something strong to drown out the thoughts swirling in my head. The bartender gave me a long look, but I didn't care. I was trying to escape. The alcohol burned as it went down, but it did nothing to numb the pain. I took another drink, and then another. My thoughts became hazier, but the emptiness inside didn't go away. When I walked out of the bar, I felt like a different person. A shell of the man I used to be. I didn't know what to do anymore. The world felt foreign, and nothing made sense. My life had been turned upside down, and I didn't know how to fix it, how to go back to the way things were. What could I do now? Could I forgive her? Could I forget this betrayal? The answer was a resounding no. There was no going back from this. There was no way I could ever look at Hannah the same way again. She had taken something from me, and no amount of apologies could ever repair it. But still, a small part of me hoped. Hoped that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to heal. A way to move on. Because no matter how much she had hurt me, I had loved her. I still loved her in a way, even though she was gone. I walked home in silence, the weight of the night pressing down on me. I had no idea what tomorrow would bring, or if there even was a tomorrow for me and Hannah. But what I knew for sure was that my life, the one I thought I understood, was gone. And it would never be the same again. The days after Hannah left were like a blur, a strange mixture of numbness and raw pain. I barely remembered what I did during the day, the hours stretching on with no real sense of purpose. Work became just a distraction, a place to hide from the reality that had shattered my life. Every time I stepped into the office, I tried to force myself to focus, but my mind was always elsewhere, back at home, where the house now felt empty and cold. I'd spend most evenings at home, sitting in silence, replaying the same scenes in my head, the way she'd looked when she confessed, the way she'd walked out of the door, her words hanging in the air like poison. She was done with me. And even though I'd heard it 1,000 times, it still didn't feel real. The betrayal, the lies, all of it, it was like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I tried to occupy my mind with little distractions, taking walks, cooking meals for myself, rearranging the furniture in an attempt to feel like I had some control over my environment. But nothing helped. I couldn't escape the truth. And every time I allowed myself to sit still for too long, the weight of the reality would crash down on me again. I went through the motions of life, but there was no joy in it. There was no happiness. No light at the end of the tunnel. One night, as I sat alone at the kitchen table, trying to finish a dinner I had half-heartedly prepared for myself, my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was just another spam message or a work email. But the second buzz came with a name that made my stomach drop. It was Hannah. I stared at the screen for a moment, unsure of what to do. I hadn't heard from her since that night. Hadn't even seen her face. After everything, I thought I'd be better off without her, but now, seeing her name, something inside me stirred. Something darker. Something I hated myself for, but I couldn't deny. I unlocked the phone and read her message. "Can we talk?" Just 3 words. But they carried the weight of everything I had been avoiding. The instant I saw them, I was flooded with conflicting emotions, anger, confusion, even hope. Hope? For what? For her to apologize? To beg me to take her back? A part of me almost wanted to see it, to hear her plead for forgiveness, even though I knew I would never trust her again. But I couldn't pretend that I wasn't curious. That I didn't want answers. I took a deep breath and typed out my response, my fingers trembling as I did so. "What do you want, Hannah?" It didn't take long for her to reply. "I made a mistake. I was stupid. I know you're angry. I know I hurt you. But I need to explain. Please." I set my phone down, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to think. I couldn't make sense of her words. After everything, how could she just waltz back in and expect me to listen? How could she be so selfish? I knew she wasn't sorry. Not really. But part of me still wanted to hear her say it. To hear her admit what she'd done. I walked over to the window, looking out at the street below. The world outside seemed normal, unaffected by the chaos in my life. It made me feel even more isolated, like I was living in a different reality from everyone else. As I stood there, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger, or sadness, or even betrayal. It was something else, something I hadn't expected, a cold clarity. I couldn't go back. I couldn't let her back in. I wasn't just hurt by what she had done. I was disgusted. Disgusted by the lies, by how easily she had thrown everything away for some temporary thrill. For someone else. I wasn't a fool anymore. I wasn't going to allow myself to be dragged back into that toxic, selfish world she had created. But even with that clarity, part of me still ached for the woman I thought she was. The woman I loved. I took a deep breath and typed my response, this time with finality. "It's over, Hannah. You made your choice, and I'm not going to sit here and let you mess with my head again. You don't get to come back and pretend like nothing happened." I hit send before I could change my mind. The next few hours passed in a haze. I kept my phone nearby, expecting a flood of messages, calls, or some grand plea for me to forgive her. But nothing came. The silence was deafening. I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The weight that had been on my chest for so long had finally lifted, but in its place was something just as heavy, loneliness. It wasn't just the absence of Hannah that hurt, it was the absence of the future I had imagined. The house that had been filled with laughter and love now seemed like a tomb, echoing with memories of a time that was gone forever. As the night dragged on, I realized that there would be no closure. Not from her, and maybe not from me. There would be no neat ending, no neatly tied-up conclusion. I would have to find my own way forward. In the weeks that followed, I started to rebuild. Slowly. I started seeing a therapist, trying to sort through the mess of emotions that still threatened to consume me. I spent more time with friends, trying to remind myself that life still went on, even if it didn't look like what I thought it would. I signed up for activities that were just for me, things that had nothing to do with Hannah or our life together. It wasn't easy. I still thought about her every day, still wondered what could have been if she hadn't walked away. But slowly, the pieces of my old life began to come back together. And for the first time in months, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could heal. I didn't need her anymore. And I wasn't going to let her destroy me any longer. The days that followed felt like a strange, constant tug-of-war between my past and future. One part of me wanted to keep moving forward, to leave the wreckage of my marriage behind, but another part still felt like it was dragging me back, like I was tethered to something I couldn't quite shake. The memories of Hannah, of us, still lingered in the corners of my mind. I couldn't escape them, no matter how hard I tried. I spent the next couple of weeks focusing on myself, or at least pretending to. I found distractions in the form of work, late nights at the office, trying to get back to the career I had neglected in the shadow of my marriage. I tried picking up hobbies I hadn't cared about in years, taking long walks at night, spending more time at the gym, just trying to reclaim some semblance of control over my life. But all of it was a bandage on a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. I didn't know if I wanted to forgive Hannah or burn every bridge with her. One minute, I was convinced I could never go back, that the trust between us had been destroyed beyond repair. The next, I found myself remembering the good times, the nights when we laughed together, the mornings when we talked about our dreams for the future. I hated that I still missed her, hated that I still cared. I was living in a limbo, caught between the desire to move on and the ache of what could have been. It was on one of those long nights that I received another message from her. This time, it wasn't just a simple text. It was a voicemail, and something in my gut told me this would be different. Something told me it would be the moment of truth, the moment where everything could either fall apart or start to heal. I hesitated for a long time before opening the message. Part of me knew it was a mistake, that listening would only drag me back into the mess I'd spent so long trying to escape. But I was too curious, too desperate for answers, too desperate for closure. So, I hit play. Her voice came through the speaker, shaky, distant, but unmistakably Hannah's. "I know I don't deserve to ask you this, but please, hear me out." Her voice cracked at the end, and I could hear the weight of her words. For a second, I almost felt something like hope, but I quickly smothered it. I couldn't afford to fall for her act again. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. But I can't live with myself knowing that I hurt you like this. I know I betrayed you, and I regret it every day. I don't even recognize the person I've become, and I just need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know what came over me, and now, it's too late. You're gone. And I'm empty without you." Her words hit me like a wave crashing into the shore, and for a moment, I felt a pang of something deep inside. I didn't know if it was pity, sorrow, or just the ghost of love that still lingered. She sounded so broken, so real in that moment. But I wasn't sure if it was real or just another manipulation. I had spent so long chasing after her forgiveness, trying to understand what went wrong, but now, as I sat there listening to her tearfully confess her regret, something clicked inside me. Something that told me that maybe it was time to stop caring. Maybe it was time to stop searching for the person who had disappeared a long time ago. I paused the message before it could finish, my finger hovering over the phone. The lump in my throat was hard to ignore, but the decision I had to make was even harder. Would I go back? Could I go back? Could I really let myself forgive her after everything? The last few months had been a constant battle for control, for healing. I had tried to pick up the pieces of my life, piece by piece, despite the lingering emptiness. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the only way I could truly heal was to stop trying to rebuild the wreckage of my past. I wasn't going to go back to her. I couldn't go back. The thought of starting over was terrifying, but it was also freeing. The truth was, Hannah had made her choice, and it wasn't me. She had walked away, and I couldn't keep waiting for her to come back, or for some magical moment to make everything okay again. That was a fantasy. A lie I had been telling myself. I deleted the voicemail. The ache in my chest didn't go away immediately. In fact, it stayed there for days, gnawing at me, reminding me of everything I had lost. But gradually, I realized that I wasn't losing something I could never have again. I was losing something that wasn't mine to keep. The person I loved, the woman I married, was gone. And maybe she had always been gone, hiding behind a mask of lies and manipulation. As the weeks passed, I started to make more solid decisions about what my life would look like from here on out. I hired a lawyer to start the divorce proceedings, not out of some desire for revenge, but because it was the only way forward. It was a step toward closing this chapter of my life. I didn't expect her to fight me for it. I didn't expect her to beg me to reconsider. But I didn't care anymore. I had made my choice. And it was time to move on. The first time I woke up after the divorce papers were filed, I felt different. I felt lighter, but also, strangely, more whole. There was no more pretending. No more waiting for things to magically get better. No more hoping that maybe Hannah would come back, or that I could fix everything. I couldn't fix it. And that was okay. For the first time in months, I was truly free. And in that freedom, I realized that I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. I had survived. And I would keep surviving. The days after filing the divorce papers were nothing like I had expected. There was no dramatic moment of freedom or relief, no celebratory sense of triumph. Instead, I found myself in a strange limbo, like I had stepped into a life that wasn't really mine, a life that I was only beginning to understand. The house felt bigger now, emptier somehow. I had grown used to the quiet, but it was different now. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet you get when you're alone and content. It was the kind of silence that made you feel small, that reminded you of how fragile your life really is. The world outside seemed to carry on, moving at its usual pace, while I was stuck in this odd in-between phase, too broken to move on, yet too far gone to ever go back. For the first time in a long time, I didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't Hannah's husband anymore. I wasn't the man I used to be. And maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to figure out who I was on my own. But that didn't make it any easier. I still thought about her. I still had moments of weakness where I remembered her laugh, the way her hand felt in mine, the way she'd curl up next to me on the couch, just to be close. But now, those memories were stained with betrayal. They weren't the same anymore. They couldn't be. It wasn't that I didn't miss her. I did, in a way. But more than that, I missed the life I thought we were going to have. The future I had planned. And that's what hurt the most. The person I loved had never really existed in the way I thought she did. She wasn't the woman I believed her to be. She was a stranger, someone who could lie so easily, someone who could betray me without a second thought. I had thought love was enough. I had thought that loyalty and commitment were all that mattered. But the truth was, love wasn't enough to keep someone from walking away. And loyalty meant nothing when it wasn't mutual. The first few weeks after the divorce were the hardest. I didn't know what to do with myself. I filled my time with work, with the gym, with long drives to nowhere in particular. Anything to keep my mind from wandering back to the place I didn't want to go. But it didn't work. Not entirely. I found myself reaching for my phone sometimes, half expecting her name to pop up on the screen. I had deleted her number, but that didn't stop the urge to check. It didn't stop the hope that maybe, just maybe, she would regret everything and come back. But that hope, that tiny, fragile hope, was dying a slow death. One evening, a month or so after the divorce papers were finalized, I found myself walking to the park near my house. It was one of those cool, crisp autumn nights when the air felt fresh and clean, the sky clear, with the promise of a new season. The park was empty except for a few joggers, their breath visible in the chilly air. I sat on a bench near the pond, the still water reflecting the orange and red of the setting sun. I pulled out my phone, checking for messages, but there was nothing. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the weight of her absence quite as much. I was getting used to it. That realization, small and quiet, felt like a victory. I wasn't moving on yet, not really. But I was starting to heal. And that was enough for now. I leaned back on the bench and closed my eyes, taking in the peace. Then I heard it, footsteps crunching along the gravel path. I opened my eyes, expecting another jogger, but what I saw made my heart skip a beat. It was her. Hannah. For a moment, time stopped. I didn't know what to say, what to do. She was standing there in front of me, looking just as beautiful as I remembered, like nothing had changed. Her hair was a little longer, and she had a soft smile on her face, but it was her. The woman I once loved. The woman who had broken me. "Hey," she said quietly, her voice soft, almost tentative. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to get up, to walk away, to not let her have the satisfaction of seeing me weak. But another part of me, the part one hated, wanted to hear her out. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice rougher than I intended. I just needed to see you," she said, looking down at the ground before meeting my eyes. "I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted to apologize. I've been trying to make sense of everything. I know I hurt you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I never meant for things to end this way." I stared at her, my thoughts whirling. Part of me wanted to let her explain, to hear the apology that I never thought I would get. But another part of me, the part that had been rebuilding my life, didn't want to fall for it again. "I don't know what you expect from me," I said finally, my words cold. "I can't just forget what you did. I can't forget how you lied, how you betrayed me. You destroyed everything. And I can't let you do that to me again." Her face fell, and for a moment, I saw the woman I used to know, the one who had loved me, the one who had hurt me so deeply. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said quietly. I needed you to know that I am truly sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I had to say it." I sat there, not sure how to respond. There was a part of me that still wanted closure, that wanted to hear her take responsibility, wanted to feel like I wasn't the fool in all of this. But the truth was, there was no closure. There was no magic word she could say that would make everything okay again. "I appreciate you saying that," I said, my voice steady. "But I can't go back. You made your choice, and I made mine." I stood up, taking one last look at her, feeling the weight of everything that had come before. "Goodbye, Hannah," I said. I turned and walked away, the cool breeze hitting my face, clearing the fog in my mind. I didn't need her to fix anything. I didn't need her to come back and save me. I had already saved myself. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally free. The night air was crisp, and the weight of everything that had happened still hung heavy on my chest. I had walked away from Hannah for the last time, but the journey toward full closure still felt like an uphill battle. Yet, as I walked through the park, the familiar surroundings seemed to offer something different, an invitation to something new. The sky was darkening, and I found myself standing still, just breathing. I didn't feel anger or sadness anymore, just emptiness. But it wasn't the kind of emptiness that meant I was broken, it was the kind that meant I was empty of the past. Free. It hit me then, with a force that surprised me. I didn't need to keep looking backward. My future was in my hands now. No more trying to fix a marriage that had shattered, no more chasing after apologies that would never come. I had all the time in the world to rediscover myself, to rebuild my life from the ground up. I turned, walking toward my car, a sense of peace settling in my chest. I had made the right decision. But as I approached the parking lot, something caught my eye. A familiar car. Hannah's. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach as I stared at the vehicle, parked a few spaces away. What was she still doing here? I had just left her. Was she waiting for me to change my mind? Did she think that some emotional confession would be enough to pull me back into her world? I hesitated. For a moment, I stood frozen, contemplating whether or not I should confront her again. But then, something inside me clicked. No. She didn't deserve another chance. I wasn't the same person who had once thought love could conquer all. I had learned the hard way that sometimes, no matter how much you care, people make choices that can't be undone. And I had to stop caring about fixing what was already broken. I turned away, heading to my car with resolve. But just as I reached the door, I froze again. There, standing under the dim light of the street lamp by her car, was another figure. A man. Tall, with a broad build, looking oddly familiar. My stomach dropped as recognition hit me like a punch to the gut. It was the guy, the one I had seen with her that day, the one who had been sneaking around with my wife. The same man who had shattered the trust I'd worked my whole life to build. I don't know what came over me in that moment. Anger? Jealousy? A need for answers? I wasn't sure, but I was moving before I could stop myself. My feet carried me towards him, each step feeling like it was pushing me towards some final confrontation that I wasn't prepared for. I couldn't let it go. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice harsh in the cold air. He turned around, and for a brief second, I could see the surprise in his eyes, like he hadn't expected me to confront him. His hands shot up, as though he was trying to defend himself without saying a word. I was in front of him in seconds, fists clenched at my sides. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the lies, the hurt, came flooding back, and I couldn't contain it anymore. "Did you think you could just waltz into my life and destroy everything?" I hissed, my voice filled with venom. "Do you think it's that easy to just erase the damage you've done?" The man took a step back, looking around as if searching for some escape. But there was nowhere to go. "Look, I didn't ask for this. I didn't know. Don't give me that bullshit." I snapped. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew exactly who she was. Don't you dare try to play the victim here. You were just as much a part of this mess as she was." He swallowed, clearly uncomfortable now. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." But the anger bubbling inside me wouldn't let me stop. "Too late for that," I growled. "You've already caused enough trouble. I didn't want to be this guy. I didn't want to be the one who lost control, who acted out of pure emotion." But in that moment, all I could feel was rage, rage at what I'd lost, rage at what they had done to me, rage at how they had both disrespected everything I had worked for. I wanted to hurt him, to make him understand what he had taken from me. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to solve anything. The man took a step back, eyes wide, clearly afraid. He was starting to realize I wasn't someone he could intimidate. But just as I was about to take another step forward, my phone rang. It was a message. The notification flashed on my screen, and my hands froze. I glanced at it, and what I saw made my stomach twist with confusion and disbelief. It was from Hannah. "I know what you're about to do, and I swear to you, I never meant to hurt you. I'm so sorry, but you need to understand, I didn't leave you for him. I left you because I couldn't be the person you needed me to be. I was lost. Please, just talk to me one last time. I swear, you'll get the closure you deserve. You deserve to know the truth." I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. My mind was spinning, trying to process her words, but something inside me already knew what the truth was. It was a lie. More words to manipulate, more excuses to avoid facing the consequences of her actions. I couldn't believe it anymore. I deleted the message. I turned away from the man, leaving him standing there, still unsure of what had just happened. And as I walked to my car for the last time, the truth hit me again. I didn't need closure from her. I didn't need her to explain anything. I was already moving forward. I didn't need her. I didn't need him. I needed myself.